Hi, and welcome to Tools Friday with FixitGearWare Security. So today, as we promised, we'll continue the process of running Nessus on Kali Linux and how you can use Nessus to test for vulnerabilities on a list of hosts or target that are in your possession. So how do you get this host or target? Usually through bug bounty programs, VDP programs, and as well if you're pen testing for an organization which you work for. Also, I'm trying to fight it hard not to do a penetration testing video this year because it's not part of the plan. But as it permits today for us to demonstrate the Nessus Essential, which is Tenable Nessus, there is a need for us to demonstrate a skill in penetration testing. I wouldn't be using a VDP IP program from a bug bounty platform because I checked a few and I discovered there are some rules and regulations which I wouldn't want this to be a situation whereby after the video has been shot and uploaded on YouTube, then some organizations will come and complain about taking down the videos and all that. So today we'll be demonstrating Nessus Tenable Essential, where we'll be scanning a locally host Windows machine. And the essence is to show you what's really going on in the background, in the sense that how Nessus Tenables work or operate. So in as much as we are scanning a VirtualBox machine on our system, there is no difference. The only difference is that for us, the machine sits on our computer, but generally this is exactly what you do. The only difference is that when you scan a target, you're now scanning a public facing facility, in this case, a network, a computer system whose public IP address are in your possession. So whatever we are teaching you here today, you can also replicate it with a live target. You shouldn't switch any concept or step. It's the same thing. The only difference is that the IP will change. In this case, you're now scanning a live target, not a VM machine hosted locally on a computer. So before we do the scanning with Tenables, we want to give you a brief introduction to network security or networking. What's the purpose of this is for you to understand the various connectivities, how you can establish connections between two VirtualBox machine installed on a VMware, and how the VirtualBox machine communicates to the public internet. So, but the first presentation will be on how the VirtualBox communicates to the public internet and how you can also establish a connectivity between two VirtualBox machines. So for this description, we'll be talking about NAT and NAT Network. So NAT stands for Network Address Translation. So what is Network Address Translation? Let's consider this orange box right now is our VirtualBox. So when you install a VirtualBox, you have an interface like this, right? And the VirtualBox allows you or enables you to install multiple VMs. So the VMs here are the virtual machines. They can be of any operating system. They can be Kali, they can be Windows, they can be XP, they can even be Vista or Mac OS. So depending on your choice of operating system, you can, decide to choose whatever you want to install on your VirtualBox machine. Now, you might be seeing a bunch of numbers which are like, for example, for the Kali, we have the 10.0.2.1. This is what we call a virtual address IP or a virtual IP, which is also known as a private IP address. So on the right also, you can see the internet. So this internet is the public internet, whereby informations can be sourced. So these informations can be website, web pages, or machines that belong to platforms where they offer trainings on penetration testing and ethical hacking. For example, we know for offensive security, right? They have a training for their various courses like the OSCP, which is the PEN 200, the PEN 300, and so on. And also if you're playing CTF, like Hack the Box, right? So for you to access this machine from your locally installed VirtualBox operating systems, you need to go to the public internet. Now, how is this possible? the communication between a list of machines to the public internet. And that's where the NAT, which is the network address translation, is necessary. So these IPs you see here, which is the private IP addresses, are issued by IANA or IANA, also known as the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. So they are responsible for allocating this private IP address, and this private IP address are not usable on the public internet. But of course, when you install the virtual machine, you also want to have access to various public internet resources, right? And that's why we have the NAT, which is the network address translation. So what does the network address translation does is that it's a service that allows this private IP address through the connectivity of your router, right? Now be able to connect to the public internet. So now when you have done the NAT connectivity, your VirtualBox machine is able to send data across your network through the router, and this data can now be sent to the public internet. So without the NAT connectivity, which will also be showing you where you can set this up on your virtual machine, there is no way you can be able to connect to the public internet. However, once the NAT configuration has been set up during the process of setting up your virtual machines or your various virtual machines, then these various virtual machines that is sitting on the VirtualBox can also be able to, connect to the public internet. Also, I want to explain something to you which is very important. For instance, if you're playing CTF on Hack the Box, there are sometimes you'll be given an IP address, which is the machine which you're targeting, right? And if you're playing via your browser, you're attacking via another virtual machine on Hack the Box, then this is exactly what is going to be explained to you right now. But for this concept of the NAT, which is the NAT, right? You're able to communicate with this. Let's say this is the Hack the Box own facility that has the virtual machines, right? You're able to communicate between your VirtualBox machine to Hack the Box virtual machines, which is considered as a public internet, right? Because of the network address translation network, which is this one. But for this to be established, there's additional configuration that has to be done. So once that additional configuration has been done, you are able to have what we call the OpenVPN. There's a file you will need to download, right? Then when you run that file, your computer, which has the VirtualBox machine or your Kali Linux, if you're installing directly to your computer, is now able to communicate to the private IP address of Hack the Box. So even though that the private IP address of the Hack the Box machine has a number value of the 10.0.0.2.1, which you will see, but your local machine or your VM machine is able to communicate to the Hack the Box virtual machine, which is also considered to be on the public internet using the VPN connectivity. So the VPN connectivity also establishes a secure connection between your whichever virtual operating system you're using to communicate with Hack the Box virtual machines. The next thing is we are now considering this to be our VirtualBox machine, right? And we have multiple machines which has the Kali, the Windows, and the XP. But how do we make this 2 or 3 machines communicate to one another? And that's where we have the NAT network. So what does this NAT network does is that, let me insert an arrow so you understand what's going on. With the NAT network right now, this machine can be able to communicate. This machine can be able to communicate with this machine, and also this machine can be able to communicate with this machine. So if let's change this to color white so you can see what's going on. So if Kali tries to connect with Windows, either via a ping or some ethical hacking procedures, Windows will be able to receive the communication. And if Windows tries to send a communication to Kali, Kali will also be able to receive the communication. So by such doing, we have been able to establish this connection using what we call the NAT network. So what does the NAT network does is that it provides a shared network between these two virtual machines. And as long as they're on the same NAT, which is the network address translation, they are able to communicate with each other, or if it's all three that has the network address translation network, all three are able to communicate with one another, but not to the public internet. So this is like a private communication, but feels like these two machines are on the public internet. So by such communication, all three machines, if they have the configuration, so you understand what's going on, okay? Just hold on. So by such doing, Kali can be able to communicate with Windows, and Windows can be able to communicate with XP. You understand? So all those three machines are able to communicate with one another through the NAT network. And this is the configuration we'll be setting up right now to be able to communicate between our Kali and the Windows machine we want to establish communication with, to test vulnerabilities that exist in this machine using the Tenable Nessus Essential. So this is not a network security or a networking course training. It's just to give you an overview. So when we are communicating between our Kali and our Windows, you're able to understand what's going on and actually what we are doing. Okay. So if you are also in the public internet or you're hacking a target, then you do not need to use any NAT network. You just use the IP address of the target and run your Nmap scan or your Nessus scan via your Kali and just discard this, and the communication will still establish. So the NAT network basically is just for this and this to communicate, or this and this to communicate, or this and this to communicate, or all three to communicate with one another. So let's close this presentation. Okay, let's just save this here. So this is our Kali on the right, and this is our Windows on the left. And before that, let me show you what we just explained right now. If you come here under settings and come under network, you can see this is NAT network, right? And if we go to advanced, we are saying that all VMs should be allowed to communicate. So any VM that is on NAT network will be able to communicate with this Windows operating system. And also, even though if they are cable connected as well, then if you come here as well, you can see the settings as well. You come under network, you can see NAT network, and we say allow all VMs. So basically, any VM that is on the NAT network will be able to communicate with the Windows and the Kali Linux. So we'll ignore this. We're only working with these two to demonstrate Nessus Tenable today. So I log into my Kali Linux and we should be good. Okay. And of course, we need to log into our Windows. So we log in, close this. So let's close this right here to avoid memory consumption. So the first thing I need to do right now is I need to start my Nessus Tenables, right? Okay. The last time we left it on and active. What do I need to do right now? Start the Nessus Tenables, right? So let me just come here and say history line grep Nessus and get the command. Okay. But before that, let's get our Kali IP address. So this is my Kali Linux IP address, right? And I come here, I get my Windows IP address. Hope you're seeing what we are doing. It's an obsolete Windows 7, so certain things might not work, like adjusting this. It's okay. So let me just increase this like this. So let me just increase this like this. So I come here, I say, okay, IP config. So IP configuration for Windows and ifconfig for Linux. And here now we can see this is our IP for our Windows, right? To be certain that our connectivity has been established, so I can come here, I can say ping. I want to ping from my Kali to the Windows to ensure that both computers are communicating accurately. And once I'm done with that, I can also ping from Windows to my Kali to ensure that both systems are communicating. So I'll just say ping, then I'll specify the Windows IP address, and of course I'll hit enter. So we should be receiving packets right now. As you can see, this packet is telling us that, okay, I can receive connectivity from this Windows computer. So this host is active as the packets I'm sending to the target is accurately received, and the target is also sending back a response to me. And that's why you are seeing these values, and it's, pinging the target with 64 bytes of data. And these are what we call the ICMP request. And of course, it's responding back with different time frames. That's why you're seeing the values here are different, or they vary. So I can just hit Ctrl Z to close the connection. Just close this. Okay. Now for I can come and say ifconfig. I think I remember the IP should be 10.0.2.15. I'm not wrong. Okay, good. So we are correct. And now you can see it ping our host, our Kali Linux host, and with 4 packets. And of course, there are no latency or loss, and all packets were sent successfully, and all responses received was equal, or is equal to the packets that were sent. So what the Windows is trying to say is that, okay, I can be able to communicate with this Linux. And of course, when we ping the Windows from the Linux is also saying that, yes, I can communicate with the Windows. So now we've gotten that out of the way. We want to launch our Nessus, right? So let me just get the command back. So Nessus can be memory consuming. I want to start Nessus. I just come here and copy this command, copy this selection. So let me just clear my screen. Of course, I come here, I paste clipboard and supply my password. Let me just increase this. Now Nessus has started. I just come and refresh the page. I should be able to log in. It's one of the problems. Nessus consumes a lot of memory. I hope we do not have any issues with that. So here's an overview of what Nessus does. If you see these badges here, it means you should upgrade. That these functionalities are not supported by the free version. So you need to purchase a license. So over the weekend, last week, I checked the license. I think the cheapest is about $3,000 in US dollars. So that's quite expensive, Well, I think that's a problem for those who are not rich, just like me. Well, let's stick to using the free version to explain what we want to do. So here we have the host discovery. So host discovery, if you're trying to scan IP addresses and a range of IP address, you can use the host discovery. Then here for web application test. So let's say I am targeting a web application, right? And I want to do Dast, which is dynamic application security testing, right? Using automation process. Then I just pick the domain, and of course I will use this, and Nessus will just auto scan the target. And of course, if there are any vulnerabilities that exist on that target, Nessus will uncover it, and of course notify us with the report. So this is one of the functionalities Nessus also can do using its automation process. So you can scan for malware, you can scan for eventual patch audit. There are a lot of things you can do with Nessus. So go through this. I wouldn't be doing most of this. Even the famous log4j, right? You can log4 shell vulnerability. You can also scan with Nessus. But that will not be doing. I just want to show you the basic concepts using the host discovery. So I'll come here, I'll click on this. Okay, now I'm pleased. This is not taking time, right? So I'll just come and say we are doing for Windows 7. And of course, checking for vulnerabilities. And I want to put it in my scan. Remember last week we created a directory. We call it my scan, right? So this is our private directory. And of course, it tells us here to put example of the IP or the host. and we can either put an IP address or a domain name. So I'll just come in and put 10.0.2. What's it again? Is it 7 or 5? I don't know. Okay, .7. So come here and put .7. So this is the target. This is our Windows machine. We have already established the NAT network, right? And of course, there are other functionalities you can do with Nessus. You can schedule a scan. You can check all these different functionalities. So here on, we want to do a host enumeration. We are not doing operating system identification. We are not doing for port scanning. So if you want to do all these things, you can just select, or you can use a custom configurations. So I won't go deep dive. This is very simple. Nessus is not complicated. I just want to show you how it does its thing. So bear with us. We're also trying to make this video short and not make things complicated. So if you come to general, this is what we are going to do. We named our target for us to be able to identify the reports we want to go through. That means if you're targeting multiple targets or you're scheduling multiple scans, then under schedule, you can enable this. So once you enable the schedule, you can select the frequency. Do you want to do it daily, weekly, or monthly? So if you say once, that means it's only once. But if you want to do it daily, then you can specify the time range. In this case, I want you to conduct this automation scan within this time range. And it would also ask you for what date do you want to start. Then for the time zone, you select the time zone. Then you can say repeat the number of days. Like I want to repeat the scan every 2 days. I want to repeat it every 3 days, or even every 7 days. So these are custom configurations. We don't be using this to schedule any scan. But this is just a single demo. Then for notifications, you have to configure the SMTP server. Remember, during the installation last week, we told you about SMTP server configurations, right? Once you've done that SMTP server configurations, you can now configure your email here. So the reports, once it's conducted, the reports will be directly emailed to you. So this concept is good for defenders or system administrators. And of course, yesterday we discussed something like this in our coding Thursday video with FixitGearWare Security, whereby you can automate your batch process and of course, configure an email address. So if there are changes regarding some files in specific directories, you should be receiving a notification that certain files have been changed or new files have been included into a specific directory. So that's the same functionality this offers. So once you schedule a scan and you have configured your email, you'll be receiving notifications once the scans are completed of the findings of the reports. Nessus on the back end will handle this and of course forward this to your email address that you set up here. And you can also add filters. So yeah, you can select the things you do not want to, include. So you can now select the values false, true. If this is equals to false, don't include it in whatever you're going to email to me. So we don't be talking about this in depth. Like I said, our intention is just to demonstrate Nessus. We do not have intention to teach any penetration testing course this year. So it's not part of the plan for this year. We'll stick to what we have in mind for you guys this year. And that's what we're working on with. Now for discovery, we've said about this, right? So do you want to do an enumeration? This means both services and ports, or you just want to scan common ports or scan all ports and custom. Then for advanced, here, you can now set custom configurations like timing or timeout, maximum simultaneous checks per host, and other configurations. So read through this is as plain as simple. It's not complex. Everything here is documented. You read through and you do the settings. But if we're all alive next year, when we're going to be doing our penetration testing series regularly on our YouTube channel. And we'll definitely be running some penetration testing with Nessus. And of course, we'll be showing you all this. So for plugins as well, there are no plugins selected, and we're not using any plugins right now. So this is where you can do plugin configurations. Now I just come here, I save this. Now, when you save this, the scan, you can see there are no results because there has not been a scan being conducted right now. That's why you're seeing nothing is moving. So if we go back here, you can see here we have the NA, not applicable, means there are no schedule. This is for dates. There are no schedule. Then here, the play icon. This play icon means launch. So if I click this right now, Nessus is going to commence the scan. And if I click this right now, we're going to delete the scan. And of course, we do not want to delete this. You can see it says trash, right? So once I click here right now, we'll go to the trash and we'll see it. So let me just delete this. Now we go to the trash. You can see it's here. And if I click here right now, then I can come here. Okay. Then move to my scan. We go back to my scan. We have restored what we deleted. So Nessus is not complicated, but once you start using the advanced features or you're doing other scan, which will be, of course, if we're all alive, will be part of what we're going to teach you next year. You should be able to learn certain things you'll be doing with Nessus. That means if we're using any of the scans to do some functionalities. So this will be part of what we'll be doing next year if we're going to be using Nessus anyway. So now let's start the scan. So to start the scan, we just click launch. Now you can see the scan has commenced. So if I click on this right now, you can see we're having some information. So remember, I said something last week as well about the pie chart. It's like a hollow chart, right? Not a full pie chart. So this is what it is. And in our report, we'll definitely be seeing for critical, for high, for medium, for low, for info. So this is part of what Nessus does. Whatever informations or discovery in terms of the vulnerabilities, they will be grouped in accordance to the severity. And you can see it's using the CVSS, which is the 3.0. And you can see the scanner is a local scanner. So like I said, we are not using the cloud. So even if somebody installs Nessus, there's no way they can, see our scan. Now on this tab, you can see this is the host. So the host is the target which we are trying to scan. And you can see so far, vulnerabilities have been discovered like 2. And history, you can see time of the day. And if we check on vulnerabilities, you can see scan, ping. So we go back, information, good, back. Okay, so let's go back. Here we put for Windows 7. Then here we check for vulnerabilities, right? And of course, we put in my scan, then we say 10.0.2.7, right? And we save this. Now let's remove this one. So the host is active, right? Now let's scan for vulnerabilities and we wait. We'll see what Nessus has to say. So it's still running, right? And let's check our Windows. Our Windows is active. So just wait for a while. You should be able to see some reports. Now you can see it's already detecting some ports, right? So just hold on. I think there are some vulnerable web applications. Yeah, I installed some vulnerable, like this netcat listener is a reverse shell. It's a vulnerability, and this also is a malware, a VNC viewer malware. So let's hold on and see what Nessus is going to find. So now you can see the progress, right? We're just 3% out of 100%. So this is going to take some time. Just be patient. But for some reasons, if we have a reasonable information, then I probably will stop the scanning. So let's check the info. So you can see, so there's an active SSH, was found to be open, was found to be open. So the SSH port is open. I think SMB should be open as well. Yeah, let's see, 445. So if you're very familiar with Eternal Blue, all those other weird vulnerabilities, you should be aware and you should know about this part. So go back. It's still scanning, and let's check the progress. Now it's 53%. That's quite fast. So by the time we're done, we should be able to see some relevant information about this target. This part of the video will be sped up. So we have 93%, right? So let's see. You can see 93%, 97%. We're already seeing like 3 vulnerabilities. So you can see we have HTTP server running. It's going to take some time. I remember that I installed some web server application. You can see, let's follow this and see what's going to happen. Right? Let's go through our browser. Yeah, so VNC is active here. So you see what Nessus is doing. It's giving us information of things we need to do. So let's, for this one, right? Okay, so let's go back. Let's check for the HTTP server. It's alive, right? So I can just come here. Okay, let me try something. And just remove this here. So you can see we're still on HTTP version 1.0. That's what our server is using. So we just hold on. This part is going to take some time for it to get to 100%. So it will take some time, and I have to pause or speed some part of this video. But usually if you're scanning a host or you're scanning a target that has a lot of resources, expect Nessus to take a lot of time. Sometimes you can just schedule these scans overnight, and of course you have your nap or your sleep. Then whenever you wake up, you check out for the results and move from there. But if you think you're just going to pass a target and get the result immediately, Nessus is not like that. Nessus will take its time to go through the target that were supplied and do some hardcore scanning. So these are informations. So a lot of ports are open on this machine. So it's not a penetration testing course. So I wouldn't be firing up Nmap to show you how to exploit most of these services, just to show you how Nessus works. So give it a time. Once it's completed, I'll show you the report on how you can, download this report. So it's completed, right? So click on this. So I can come here. Let me see. Nessus scanner. So these are the whole information, right? Come here. Let me come on report. Now I can decide to export this as a PDF or as HTML or as CSV. So I can say by host, by detailed vulnerabilities, by plugin, vulnerabilities operation. So I can decide, or I can come here and say this, and I'll say generate report. I'll say generate the report. And after that, I think we can be able to download this. So you can see the Windows 7, right? Tells us the Windows 7 time, midnight, and of course, critical zero information. There's, so if we go back here as well, thing scanner reports. So I can set detailed vulnerabilities by first, say generate this. Now we have about 17 pages right here. So now you can see information here. We can see our IP address, the MAC address. So you might be wondering, what's the MAC address, right? It's the physical address. So I'm sorry about it. So for the MAC address, you can see this via the VirtualBox machine. Sorry, we've closed it. Then for the operating system, it's telling us we are running Windows 7 Professional. And if we come here, let's see, and we come to computer system properties. So if we come to system properties right now, we can see we are running Windows 7 Professional. You can see it here. So it's Windows 7 Professional, and of course, Microsoft Windows Professional. So it tells us a list of port and services open. So the SSH port is open, and also it tells us the TCP port, Telnet. Yes, there's a Telnet application running here. It's open. Then AppMap is open. SMB, you can see SMB is also open. So if you're very familiar with Eternal Blue, we can now launch our Metasploit to use the auxiliary scanner. To use the auxiliary scanner to determine if this Windows operating system is vulnerable to SMB. Of course, it is vulnerable to SMB, which is the server mail block. But we don't be doing that because this is not a penetration testing course. So these are informations of the various ports that were discovered using Nessus. Also see the RPC port is also open, and so on. So using Nessus is not complicated, it's not difficult, and for larger organizations, you have to learn how to schedule your scans, because let's say you are, let me shut this down. I don't need this anymore. So you got to learn how to use the automation for Nessus scan. Let's say for large organizations, right? You cannot be conducting manual penetration testing every second. So if you have fixed the major vulnerabilities, such as like the part of the web application or network that is vulnerable in terms of the web application, like SQL injection, security misconfiguration, and so on, and you know that you've hardened the web application, right? Then you shouldn't be worried about any future attacks. But to also be safe, or to be on a safer side, codes can be vulnerable over time due to some manipulations that are possible with a segment or part of a code, right? And as this occurrence happen, you as a penetration tester are not like these security organizations like Nessus that have the responsibility of, scouting through the public internet using sophisticated softwares and equipment such as AI to discover or uncover new vulnerabilities that are prone to technologies, either legacy systems or new technologies. So when they do this, they update their cloud instances or database, and of course your Nessus will be able to pull those resources and of course scan your network. So if you're going to be using Nessus, if you're working for an organization, learn how to schedule the scan, and not just on web application or host discovery. You can also schedule for other malware, like we said, that were discovered during the process, right? So learn this is very important. And of course, to avoid resources consumption. Let's stop our Nessus. So learn all this. It's very important to know all these things. And by so doing, you can be able to secure your organization's network and infrastructure. So with that, we have concluded the demo for Nessus Tenable Essential. And if you want to dive deeper with using Nessus for penetration testing, you can either go to the official Tenables website and read information about it. But if you're not confident on the skills or how to use this, then be patient. By next year, we'll be going full penetration testing mode. So for this year, we're not conducting any penetration testing course. Just want to do the fundamentals in cybersecurity, and that's what we are focusing on for this year. But by next year, God's willing, we will be going into ethical hacking and penetration testing. So please bear with us, and we hope to start our penetration testing courses and training next year. So with that, we have finally come to an end of this week's episode on Tools Friday. If you find this video interesting, please do not hesitate to give us a like by hitting that likes button, subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to get notified when next we post another episode of Tools Friday with FixitGearWare Security. Thanks for watching and see you next week. Bye for now.